All right, guys, what's going on? We're here. We're live. Welcome to a brand new Poker Live podcast. My name is Joey Grimone, aka Chicago Joey, coming to you on location once again, guys. As you can see, we're not in the customary office. We're here on the road. We're in Irvine, California, where everyone appears to be Asian, and I'm enjoying it out here. It's a lot of fun. And but we got to keep moving on, man. We got to keep doing some podcasts. We got a lot of great guests coming up. We're gonna have tomorrow. We're gonna have Sean Deeb on at 4 p.m. Eastern. Sean said he wanted to come on and discuss the Jason Mercier versus Doug Polk little thing that's happening on Twitter. And I'm sure we'll discuss his recent scoop and how he can possibly win tournaments all the time for years and years and years. So that'll be tomorrow. But today, we're joined by a legend of the poker world. And when I say legend, you guys know I don't use the term legend lightly. I'm not a Twitch streamer who calls every fucking buddy a legend. I call a certain number of people a legend. And this guy, I think, is going to classify as a legend. Been a long-time poker player. He's made many, many, many mindset, mental game poker videos for people over the years, myself included, that have been able to take a lot of information away from those. He's written many books. He does coaching. He's a musician. He plays the banjo. He probably does some other things that we don't even know yet what he does, but we're going to find out today on the podcast. We're joined by Tommy Angelo. What's up, Tommy? Welcome to the Poker Live podcast, buddy.
What's up, Joey? You cracked me up. I love your intros. Thank you.
Was that a good intro, or what do you think?
That was pretty good. Thank you very much. You got me blushing over here.
That's okay. That's what I like to do. I like to make the guys blush. It's like that's my secret go-to strategy I use.
Well, and the hair has something to do with it. Nice color.
You think so?
Good color.
Would you? Okay, let me ask you a question. So you currently
cup here. Look at that.
It kind of does, yeah. Do you have not hair right here because is that a personal choice, or is that because just age catches up?
Oh, this left me when I was about 30. I've had all the guys in my hairline have this shape hairline. It's
okay. So let me ask you a question.
Huh?
When you had a full head of hair,
yeah,
would you have done something like this to your hair? Knowing what you know now that you might not have hair past 30, would you have done this to your hair at any point in time in your life previous to that?
I did something like that. I played in a band for 10 years, and I had a perm. And I knew the perm was going to make me maybe lose my hair like 2 years earlier. But like you said, I didn't care because I knew it was falling out anyway.
Okay, good. I had a discussion recently on a podcast with Doug Polk, and he said, is there a certain age you can't do your hair like this? And would you do your hair like this at 50 or 60? And my answer was, of course, I would do it at 50 and 60.
Oh, yeah.
And also, I feel like there's no age to do something like this to your hair. So I'm happy to hear that you also enjoyed it.
The phrase age appropriate, it's easy to shoot down. But living here very near Berkeley, I see all the hair colors from all age groups. So it doesn't really matter.
Okay, Tommy, tell the people, I gave an intro about you, but I guess give the people a little bit more information about you for those that might not be too familiar with your work in the poker world over the years.
Okay. Well, I became a professional in 1990, and I'd been playing my whole life. I was born in 58, so I was already like 30-ish when I turned full-time pro. It was after my music career. Grinded in home games. There's like a house games with a house dealer and a rake and everything, but there were basement games in Columbus, Ohio. There was a whole circuit of them. So I grinded in those for 7 years, and during that period, I was going to Vegas and Atlantic City and other places and getting beat up there and learning more, about how to really survive. And so then in 97, I moved to California because of the poker out here. And my brother was already out here in San Francisco, so I had a little bit of a route and came out. I moved right next to Artichoke Joe's on the peninsula just south of San Francisco, and then about a year later, they opened Lucky Chances right up the road. So I had 2 major poker rooms, within 10 minutes, and basically led the perfectly degenerate lifestyle there for about 6 years. So I had about 13 years of raw degeneracy, and then I met my current wife, Kathleen, and then there was like an interim period. And so what happened was I was, tilted a lot, did everything wrong really you could do, played too long, everything, all the time. And then my game was good, good enough to win back then. And then gradually I realized, okay, I just have to start playing my A game more often, period. That's where my biggest income gain can come from, is just from playing more consistently. So I'd say I had that realization around 2000 or so. And then I'll just tell you the whole story because it kind of all goes together. Around 2003, around 2002, I started drinking way more than I ever did before for like a year. So I had one really drunk year. And then in 2003, I got a DUI, quit drinking, and started meditating. So that all happened in the course of one day. Okay.
Wow.
And so that was kind of like my turnaround. Up until then, I realized I was like 45 at that time. And I remember when I was 35 telling myself, okay, when I hit 40, that's what I'm going to, you know, straighten out physically at least, get more exercise, quit polluting my body all the time. Turned out it was 45, and it turned out I needed some assistance to pull that off. But I look back on the DUI as the luckiest thing that ever happened to me because nobody got hurt. And I knew right then I was done with drinking. And so I just started doing yoga and meditation, and that caught on so quickly that I started doing it every single day. So now the way that timing played out with poker is kind of interesting because that was in August of 2003. This is right when the explosion was taking off, right? Mm-hmm. So 2004, by the beginning of 2004, I was really feeling good about everything, and I was getting a lot of requests for coaching and teaching because there were just thousands and thousands of people coming in. And so right from the beginning, I started developing a coaching program that was aimed more for experienced players, you know, serious amateurs or professionals. And I really wasn't into teaching beginning instruction, there was a huge demand for that at that time. So that's how I started getting into coaching. I don't think that ever would have happened if I hadn't, you know, straightened my act up first. That was a big part of it. And then that also, I believe, made me qualified to talk to guys about this stuff. That's kind of the whole why it was important that I had to go through that, I think, to be able to help people with some of the problems now because I've been through it all. And so then what happened was I did a lot of coaching in 04 and 05. That's when I coached Phil, Dave Benefield, a couple other guys, and those are the only really famous ones. And then in June 2006, I had collected this enormous amount of material on everything, and I decided to write a book. Now, I had done many long-range projects in the past that stalled like they often do because I would be playing poker and I'd get in a funk and say, fuck everything and not want to do anything, right? So I'd never successfully completed a long-range writing project in my life. And I knew that the only way it could happen was if I just quit playing poker completely until it was done. So that was a huge realization, and then I did that. So I didn't play a hand for approximately a year and a half while I wrote Elements of Poker, my first book. And then when it came out, then my coaching business exploded at that time, largely because of Phil and a couple other guys saying that it went well, and they had a big voice at the time already. So I was getting more and more professionals and serious amateurs wanting to hire me. So naturally, I developed more and more material for that type of person. And that happened around, that was after Elements of Poker came out. So 08, 09, I did a lot of coaching. I was coaching full-time, which for me is one new client every 3 weeks. That was a full-time schedule for me because it's a major program. So after about 2 more years of that, I put a big sign on my website, said I'm not taking clients anymore, and started writing another book. We'll go into that later, but that's get you pretty much caught up to now. So since then, the last 5 or 6 years, I've been working on one book called Painless Poker. And I've been doing some coaching in the meantime, some playing, but primarily writing and making videos for one-on-ones.
So you've been working on the last book for 5 to 6 years at this point in time.
Yeah, 6 years. Yeah, 6 years. I
know Elements of Poker is definitely a classic book for people who are big into poker books. I was really I've only read one poker book, which was a book when I was transitioning from Nolan Hold'em to Pot Live in Omaha. So I never really got into those books. Whenever they suggest books, that is definitely the one I always hear at the top of the list for people to check out. Elements of Poker, I think is certainly one of the classics. That makes sense. I mean, you came out with the book, and then your coaching exploded.
It's not a strategy book, just so you know.
Right. I know. It's more towards the mindset. It's about the mental game of poker, right?
Right.
I think that's probably why it was so popular, is because I don't think back then there was too many books that really addressed that side of things.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things, like there's stuff in there about, say, live poker, how to manage the staff and the dealers, and all kind, and the etiquette, like showdown etiquette. I found there were a lot of books that about poker, and naturally it's about strategy. That's the most interesting thing, and that's what most people are attracted to. But there are a lot of other little pieces of, I think, what makes a professional poker player profitable, that not even just tilt stuff, just attitude and professionalism. So there's a lot of that in there too.
That's interesting, because I never really talk about this too much on the podcast, but when people say, what makes a successful high stakes poker player, I always think a lot of the things that make up that person are maybe 15 to 20 different qualities, maybe even more, but you don't really hear them discussed in videos. You don't really hear them written about. And the book actually sounds like that's what that's about. It's about figuring out those qualities that, you don't really maybe think about, but some people just have them naturally. Some people accidentally get better at them, but it's really hard to quantify exactly what it is that you're doing well in that situation.
Yeah. And then there are some things that everyone has, can get better at. For example, impatience, experiencing less impatience, right? That in itself, for any player, no matter how great they are, is going to make them money if they can do that. So that's one of the things I was always looking for, is like, what are some of the common things that every single person wishes they did better? And then those are the types of things I can write in a general voice, to everyone. And then when it comes to coaching, we zero in on, okay, here's a guy who is naturally calm, like you said. There are certain traits that some people have naturally. Other traits people need to be aware that they would do better if they had more of, and then come up with some sort of training program to get it. That's another thing. I've made a whole bunch of notes about things we might talk about since we booked this, but I know you're into like weightlifting and stuff, right? And
yeah, I'm into lifting, just being athletic, playing sports and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Right. But the whole idea of training, the whole idea of like doing something over and over on purpose, with the idea of strengthening a muscle. And you know for a fact, if you lift a certain amount of weights a certain number of times, a certain number of hours per week or whatever, that the muscle fibers will break down, they will get bigger, and that will happen. It's guaranteed, right? I have found the same thing is true with me when it comes to mental training, and that's kind of what I try to tell guys I'm coaching about, because one of the big worries is like, it's not happening yet. It's not happening fast enough. Nothing's happening fast enough. Well, if you want to lose weight, if you want to lose 10 pounds, you can't just like eat salad for 2 days and think something's going to happen, right? It's the same thing with mental training. It's a long game, very, very long game. So what I try to do is show people how to get the training going in a way that's self-sustaining, so that it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like work, or it doesn't feel like a chore that you're checking off a list, okay? So I'm guessing, like, when you go to the gym, are there sometimes you really look forward to it? You actually look forward to the training itself, or do you think, oh my God, I got to go do that again?
No, I think I look forward to the training. I really enjoy, I guess I enjoy just getting better at it. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the climb up. I enjoy the pursuit to having some sort of ending in mind and then working towards that. Yeah.
So the patience is built in, though, because you already know it's going to take a while to reach some of these goals, right?
For sure.
Yeah. That's what people tend to be very impatient with mental, fixing mental noise in their head. But if you think about it, it's built up not just over their own life, but over the whole history of human consciousness. We all share this sort of collective virus of never really being satisfied with how things are, always wanting things to be different, or else wanting things to stay the same. And that is the fundamental mental process that's like churning in our mind all the time. I heard somebody else call it the fault-finding mind. It's like, okay, there's something wrong here. We need to fix it. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. And that's not a bad thing, because that's how we keep from, injuring ourselves or whatever, right? Evolutionarily speaking, it's a great tool for mammals to have. But then because of human consciousness, it kind of gets out of hand sometimes when we're just like seeing errors and problems everywhere all the time.
So what exactly did you do to, I guess, learn these things, get better at these things, be able to acquire the knowledge yourself to be able to coach other people in these areas?
Well, the way I learned how to coach was really by doing it. I mean, I did get some instruction on coaching, but I think what you're asking about is the mental games, the mental stuff, how to calm your mind down, like how.
Right, like yeah. So how did you get to a point where you felt like you acquired enough knowledge to start coaching other people in that area?
Oh, very, very soon. Okay. So when I started doing the meditation yoga, it was like 4 or 5 months later. I was like, okay, I can definitely help poker players. I already thought I could help poker players with all kinds of things, but I think I felt like I really had a tool now to share that would be helpful. It didn't take me long. And I have a little metaphor for that, which is I look at it as like, okay, if I know one chord on guitar and you know none, then I have something to teach you, right? I don't have to be a master on guitar to teach you a chord that you can use. So I didn't need to be I was a terrible meditator before and I was already teaching people about it, even though I had pretty much just started. Because they can go learn it on their own from a real teacher. You know, I saw my job as just to like introduce them to the whole possibility and the whole idea of it.
So you bring up something interesting, which a lot of because there's a lot of coaches that coach poker these days, and one thing I read is that so the debate, I guess, on one side is that exact thing you said, where these experienced poker players who might not be able to win in the games today know more than newer poker players, so they have something to teach them, where the kind of argument against that is that they're going to be teaching them potentially negative things that might actually hurt that player's progress.
Right.
So I mean, I guess I kind of see it both ways. Yeah. I see it more towards that they can actually help the person more than hurt them. But what do you think about that?
You mean as pertains to poker?
Pertaining to poker coaches. So let's say there's Nolan Old players who are coaching poker now, or teaching people who aren't necessarily winning at the game now, but maybe had a 2-year period where they won 6 years ago, and now they've just been coaching since then. Right,
and they're giving away they're teaching obsolete information.
Well, that would be the argument that some people make, because this is a common thing. We haven't heard too much about it recently, but this is a common thing amongst the idea of coaching in the poker community.
Right. Well, my view on that is so what? I mean, you know, if Joe wants to pay Bob for coaching, that's their own contract. I don't see really how it's anybody else's business. You know, I mean, I don't.
I guess I've always.
Pardon me?
Yeah, until I heard you explain it the way you explained it, where you started coaching, you knew some things that other poker players just didn't think about or know, and you felt like you could really help them. So I think it's interesting that when you put that comparison to the idea of Milton Hold'em coaches right now in online poker, that they could probably still teach. Like it makes sense. I was always like, I always maybe.
Here's another thing. What makes a good coach isn't going to be just what his knowledge base is that he's working from. It's how well can he speak to what that client needs? How well can he understand what that client will understand, right? So let's say you got a guy who hasn't been caught up with the modern strategies for 5 years, but he's teaching a guy and he's really, really good at isolating 3 or 4 weaknesses then in that guy's game and helping him on the stuff he does know. You know, coaching is really, in my opinion, it's about listening to the client and knowing where their head is at. Because how else that's why when I'm coaching a guy, now you got to keep in mind, especially in my early years, I coached a lot of strategy. I had a bunch of clients where we spent like 70% or more of our time on strategy, and they would send me hands every week, and we would go through strategy. And I felt that my ability to coach was 100% dependent on how much I knew about how they play, period. I had to have that information, or else I was blind. I see coaching as a very personal, private affair. That it really, I don't know how anybody else could really judge how good somebody is at coaching. other than just talking to the clients, I guess.
That's interesting. So I never really heard it explained that way. So it's very interesting for you to say that. So you mentioned you've been primarily focusing on just working with certain players over these past bunch of years then?
Well, I've coached a total of about 100 guys, and mainly in two clumps, two-year periods, 05, 06, and then 2008 and 2009. And since then, I've just been coaching a couple a year. But I still work with them.
So how else do you spend most of your time then, right now?
Writing and playing music and cooking and just hanging out with my wife and our friends and stuff.
Interesting. So I've tried writing. I've wrote some things. Writing seems challenging.
It is.
And it makes complete sense when you say you've been working on this book for 5 to 6 years. Before I might have been like, that doesn't make sense. Why don't you write it? But after trying to write myself, I completely understand how that's possible. Because
yeah.
You always want to hear for yourself. You know, you seem like a kind of guy, if you're going to put something out there, you want it to be fucking awesome. You want it to be exactly what's in your mind. That's what you want to get across. And I guess for you, what's the biggest challenge for you in finishing this book?
Oh, there's no challenge in finishing it. I mean, nothing can stop me. I would rather be writing right now than talking to you, believe it or not. That's how much I love doing. No, this project is in the final stages. So because I've written like 100 or more articles and a couple books and the videos, my process is very efficient, and it's right now the book is done. It's done, and now I'm just editing it and tweaking it and putting the polish on, like all kinds of little tweaks and things. Have you heard anything about it or anything?
I think all I've heard about it is from you. That's what I know about the book so far. Tell us more about it.
I'll tell you about it. Okay, so Elements of Poker started as like a 300-page gob of collected notes that I collected from coaching, right? Painless Poker started the same way. When I did my second 2-year surge of coaching, I ended up with about 300 more pages of notes and various things I collected. So I started putting it into a book, but I didn't want it to be another Elements of Poker type book. I wanted it to be more readable or whatever. One of the reasons it's taken so long is because the book changed direction completely a couple times. It's the classic, okay, that was fun, wad it up, throw it away, start over thing. But that's a very good process sometimes. So now what it is all that material about it, all this stuff related to poker, it's set in a fictional setting called the Painless Poker Clinic. Okay, so it's me teaching a 2-day seminar with 7 poker players. Now this is pure fiction. Every character is completely made up. I could tell you right now all of their names and their entire life history because I've been living with them for 5 years. Well, for 3 years. They didn't show up till about 3 years ago. So, and there's some drama, there's conflict, and so we're basically just sitting around talking for 2 days. Okay, now in the story, I am me. So it's a fiction story, but I am one of the characters, like as me, with my name. So for example, when Charlie Archer beams in, he recognizes me. Okay, nobody else recognizes me. So the way they all get to the clinic, they're not volunteers. They all just showed up, like Star Trek type, boom, beamed in at their moment of greatest pain, at their moment of greatest poker pain. So all 7 of these people eventually tell their story about what they were doing when they got beamed into the clinic. And so as a writer, this was kind of fun because I got to cook up 7 of the most painful stories I can imagine. And there's one that really is the prime one. But so then we sit around and talk for 2 days about all these topics, and you get to know these characters. They're classic archetypal characters. One of them is a lawyer with 2 kids, plays 5-10 no limit, and wishes he could go pro, but knows he never can because he has the family. He's got all kinds of anxiety. He's like a rough and tumble lawyer kind of guy. We got the classic super geeky, Spock / data / everything's literal guy. And then we got an online grinder, Charlie Archer, plays 12 to 20 tables online grinding, 2, 4, and 3, 6. That's his entire life. He's real. He's the only guy there that knows me. So like he's a fanboy already. So I use him as like a device for all kinds of things. And then there's my favorite character Her name is, she's the only woman character. Her name is Babs McDurdy.
Thank God you included a woman, Tommy. We don't want to get the feminist against you if you have just 7 males in there. So thank God.
Well,
thank God.
They might not feel very well represented by Babs, but so she's 42 and she was raised on poker because her dad had a game in the basement. So she's been dealing since she was 16, playing since she was 18. Her dad died young and left her $100,000 bankroll to go be a pro. And so for the last 22 years, she's been grinding or dealing back and forth, living that life. So that's what most of the book is about. There's also some sections of memoir that are actual reality of my actual story. This sort of mirrors it. It's I don't know how it's going to read. I have no idea, but I'm having a lot of fun writing it.
You should have included an online poker player who.
It's not too late.
Right. So an online poker player who was playing poker professionally until the person's country changed the laws and that wouldn't let that person keep playing poker online. But that person had a family, a wife and 2 kids. All their money was then taken by the site that shut down, and they didn't have any money for the next 3 to 4 years, and they were in a very low point of pain, couldn't leave the country to keep pursuing poker, and didn't live anywhere where poker was accessible. And then when they found some online sites, they put money on those sites, and then those sites stole their money. Still stuck in. You should include a player like that. I feel like you could find somebody that might actually something like that. I'm curious what that's. I want to know what that guy should have done.
You know, it's interesting you should mention that. I made a conscious decision. I can always change my mind still to not include Black Friday. I had it in there for a while, and it just became a little tricky. But now I want to reconsider it. So I could put something in there, but that was that could very well be. The reason is I have this set in 2016. So for that to happen, it could be somebody telling about it. Somebody could be telling about it way back when. I think I will do that. Include a Black Friday story. That's a good idea. And now I'll make a note to put you in the acknowledgments.
Shout out to me. Well, let me get some shout outs here quick, guys. We're live on YouTube. We're only on YouTube today. Let me get some shout outs. Let me see what we got in the chat. Let me see. We got my boy Rob McNutton Puppy Coramosa. What did Rob say? Let me see. He said, finally commentating on my favorite podcast. Puppy, love the show. Always cook my dinner and do my housework with a fresh podcast in my ears. Props, my dude. Rob, shout the fuck out to you. Much love, kid. Rob says something else, too. I don't usually read comments like this in the chat, but he left a couple nice comments. I want to show him some love. Well, I guess that's showing me more love. That's the most interesting pod right now. Available 2 + 2 is dope, but the Mender. Shout out to you. Let me see what the next one. Super GTO for my girlfriend is out and I can listen to what I want type of thing. I like it, man. Much love. Evan P. What's up, Evan Puppy? Shane Monks, Wojciechowski, Marco. Let me see, man. Palmer Squall, you're leaving some comments that are some of the worst comments so far, but it's not too late, Palmer, to turn your comments around. Please hit the lab and learn how to leave some better topics here, man. All right, let's get back into it. So, Tommy, so the point of the book, what's the overall point of the book?
Great question.
Actually, never mind. Hold on. Palmer, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That was your last question, and it was a good question. So I take it back. You're actually playing great. Never mind. Keep it up. Go ahead. That one's for you. Now it's you. What's the point of the book?
Oh, was that their question or your question?
That was their question. When you were talking about the book, he's like, what's the point of the book? Okay. And then I was like, that's a dumb question. But now it's actually a good question.
Okay.
What's the point of the book? That's true.
The first priority of the book really is to entertain. You know, there's a lot of lessons and teaching and stuff in there, but it's really, what I'm hoping is that the reader enjoys the act of reading it. That's my primary goal as a writer with this book. When it comes to the lessons that are in there, then in broadest strokes, it's that it's worth our effort to make it our goal to reduce our unhappiness. And I like using that wording rather than talking about increasing happiness, because increasing happiness can be, it's not really clear what happiness is to everyone, right? Happiness for somebody could mean some type of debauchery, and somebody over here wouldn't think of that as being happiness, right? But everyone knows what it means to be unhappy or feel jealousy or anger or anything like that. So what this book is really about, and this does come from Buddhism, which is the idea of recognizing that thought itself is where unhappiness exists, and then learning how to be aware of your own thinking, and then learning how to change your thinking consciously. And that's what the training is. That's what meditation is, training for being able to do that. It's like lifting weights, okay? So what happens in this book is the people at the clinic go through essentially my program, the stages that my clients go through a lot of times when it comes to the meditation type topics. Because first, then everyone goes through this. There's the okay, it's bullshit, it's woo-woo, it's whatever, okay? So there's a big part of, a lot of the words in the book address that aspect that are like an objection. And then let's say there's somebody who's really interested in doing it, but they're like, well, I can't do it because my mind's too busy. I can't settle my mind. I can't do it because I don't have the time. I'm married, I got kids, there's no way I can do it. So there's all these standard reasons why people can't do it. Those things are handled in there. Then it comes to, by way of the characters at the clinic voicing these things, okay? So then there's the actual how to do it. And then that's toward the end. They warm up a little bit enough to want to learn how to actually do it. So ultimately the theme of the content of the book is about mindfulness and about reducing unhappiness and about being good to people, being compassionate. That's also another one of the very strong themes of the book, is just being good to each other just because.
Boy, so listen to you describe the book. Is this a drug inspired book, or is this something that sort of just comes from natural over time, over the years sort of thing?
Drug inspired, you mean from not doing drugs anymore, or from writing under the influence?
Either one. Maybe you use drugs to enhance the creativity in your mind to come up with things. Maybe it's something that you've done in the past. I know for me, It's something that I've done in the past that I feel like is sort of, brought out some creative energy in myself over these years.
Sure. Yeah, I use THC for that purpose.
Currently, right now?
Yes.
What I actually don't know what that is. So what does that do?
That's the active psycho element in marijuana.
So it's marijuana.
Psychoactive. Yeah, it was just, well, you used the word drug, so I just said THC. But I prefer the word pot.
Interesting. I tried. Well, I don't want to get into that story. That's a bad story. But yeah, okay. So you feel like that helps you unlock the creative ideas in your mind?
It doesn't unlock. It's just another way to think. So I do a lot of my work not under the influence. I do some of it under the influence, but I've been doing that for so long that I just know what the effects are and what I should use when and whatever. It's
so I've heard a lot of people over the years have used things like like LSD and things like that to really help unlock. I don't exactly know what they unlock in their mind. It just helps expand the brain. It feels like. Have you ever thought about doing things like that to potentially help in terms of, I guess maybe not help, but just in terms of maybe bring up something different in your mind when it comes to creating content?
Well, sometimes I will use pot specifically as a writing tool, but with mushrooms, it's just purely recreation. I don't do that specifically to enhance my writing. In fact, I don't do any writing then.
Do you attend like any of the music festivals like that, or are you into? Well, you play music. You must. Okay, never mind. What music festivals do you go to? What kind of music events do you go to?
I don't go to that as many anymore, but I used to go to all of them. Back in the day.
Really?
When I was your age, I used to go to every concert that came through. But they have some good festivals in San Francisco. They have a couple of big ones over there. Golden Gate Park, 3-day festivals.
Do you go to any shows now?
We go to concerts now and then, but it's kind of funny how it's developed. It's like Not so many rock and roll concerts anymore. There's a place right down in Berkeley called Freight and Salvage, which has acoustic music and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. I don't go to big rock and roll concerts anymore. I think it's because all the guys that I really like are all my age. So, but I used to go to every concert back then. I mean, Stones, Led Zepp, The Who, all of them.
Is your hearing affected for the negatively at this point in time in your life? Actually,
I did blow out my left ear when I was playing music for a living, because I was on drums for 4 years, and then I moved to piano, and I bought the biggest amp there was and had it right over here next to my ear, and I did some fairly significant damage of 4,000 cycles in this ear.
So how does it sound? Do you have a hearing aid at this point in time, or how does it sound?
I don't have a hearing aid, but I don't hear words as well as I would, but don't need a hearing aid yet. I don't think.
Very lucky. Let me. There was a good comment here. I think this is a really good comment from Juan Pablo Corsi. He says, "What is the main reason that keeps people unhappy? Also, how to get out of anxiety or feeling your subconscious sabotaging you?" Well, that seems like a pretty interesting question.
Since I got into the coaching, then I started doing more reading about what other people teach in these areas. And to me, both of those questions, I started writing them down, but they're basically the same thing. There's so many little metaphors that work, but if you think of of your mind as a wild horse, okay, it runs wild, like all the time. It lives in the wild, and there's never any conscious effort to put a saddle on it and get it to just stand still so that you can do exactly what you want with it. That's how we live our whole lives, okay? Through the training of meditation, it's possible to train yourself through sheer repetition to slow your mind down and train it like a horse. And then you can ride that horse and you can control it. The horse itself is still the same horse. If you look at that horse, you can't tell the difference. If you take a picture of it in the wild and take a picture of it after it's tamed, it looks the same. But it's a completely different horse. Its function is completely changed, and its utility is completely changed. And that is the very slow, gradual process of mindfulness training that can allow someone to not be lost in their own crap. Not forever. That's the other thing, okay? It's always temporary. In Painless Poker, one of the questions Charlie asks, he's like, I tell them this is the Painless Poker Clinic, and he says, is painless poker even possible? And what I say is, yes, it's possible, but it's not sustainable, right? Sometimes we have anxiety, sometimes we don't, and it's random. If we want to consciously undo the anxiety, the only time we can do that is during the moment we're feeling anxious. So it isn't like you meditate for 5 years and then you don't have anxiety anymore. You just have less. And it doesn't last as long because when it comes up, you have a tool, you can pull out your tool belt to make it stop. So the anxiety never ends. All you can do is just have it be less often, less severe by training your horse to stand still.
Interesting. So the horse in this scenario is
your mind.
Your mind.
Just your mind. Yeah.
So if you were going to give a suggestion to people out there who wanted to go upon this path but really weren't sure where to look or what to go to, what would you suggest is like a easy way to them to just maybe get started and learning more about it?
I would say buy this book. It's called Wherever You Go, There You Are by Jon Kabat-Zinn. Kabat-Zinn. He wrote this book specifically for people who are interested and know nothing, basically. And it's very well done. I give it to all my clients.
Interesting. So 100 clients. So I guess you've been able to turn this coaching into, well, you say you don't do it super full time anymore, it sounds like, but it sounds like over the years you've been able to take coaching and then turn that into your main business and the way that you make a living. I
did, yeah, for about 4 out of the last 10 years. I made a good amount of money coaching during those 2 surges.
Hmm.
But
do you have something else that you do besides that in order to make a living, or is that, I guess, how does
no, well, I have a wife and she has a job, so that helps.
Geez, yeah. What, are you on the rich girl grind, Tommy? You know what the rich girl grind is, right?
Tell me.
The rich girl grind. Rich girl grind is when you meet a woman who makes some money, and then that's a rich girl grind right there. Someone who makes a lot of money.
I heard a quote long ago that said, "Behind every great rider is a woman with money."
Is that true?
I don't know. It's a nice little theory, though. So I actually am still making tens of thousands of dollars per year, in the low tens of thousands, from Elements of Poker and Rubber Band Story, my second book. It's still selling because it's, ebooks all over the place, all over the world. It gets a lot of word of mouth. I think a lot of new players come into the game, and then they go around and people recommend it. So I have a little bit coming in there. And but basically what I'm doing right now, and then the videos, but this book project is part of I think of myself as a writer now. That's it. That's all I really want to do indefinitely. And so what I'm doing with this book is, from a business standpoint, is, hopefully the book will sell or whatever, but I'm also building my brand. I will be more so at the same time, so that whatever other books I write will have this, a bigger market already there. Building my network, building my mailing list, all that. So even though I'm not generating a lot of writing revenue right now, I still feel like I am working and making money as a writer. It's just I haven't collected on it yet.
That's you mentioned this at the beginning, having that patience, having that long-term outlook, and understanding that what you do in the short term might not make you any direct monetary compensation, but down the road, it will put you in a position to make an unknown it's sort of like XXX unknown variable, but you know that if you put the work in, it'll get you to a point where that does support you monetarily.
Yeah, and I'm very, very fortunate to have enough padding right now to be able to write without a deadline. That's really a great, great luxury.
It's interesting stuff. So what if you didn't have a deadline? You don't think you'd be able to? I mean, maybe that sort of pressure would actually, I don't know, maybe that would do something else to you. Maybe that'd be a good thing, having that pressure, having that sort of deadline to have to get it done, and maybe. What do you think about that?
No, that's a very good point. I put pressure on myself to perform and get a lot of work done, but on much, much shorter timescales. So let's say I set a goal. I say, okay, I'm going to finish the book in 6 months or whatever. I make a reasonable estimate, okay? And so then month 4 comes along, and I have to go to Ohio for a funeral, or I decide to rewrite a 5-page section that's going to take a week or whatever. You know what I mean? What am I going to do? Decide, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make the book shitty so that I can fulfill this arbitrary deadline that I made up. So the deadlines I give myself are day to day. I might, after lunch, I might say, okay, I'm going to write until 3. If I get my hours in every day of writing, that's it. Game over. I've won the writing game for that day.
Interesting approach. I like that. I'm going to ask you something about that somebody mentioned on Twitter the other day, and you're the perfect person to ask this question. So I think it was my buddy Pekka PP, some Finland kid who he seems very GTO in his talking, but he was talking about, we were talking about the idea of feeling happiness, of feeling sadness, of feeling anger. And he was he asked me a question about it. Myself, as I've gotten more consistently successful at poker and winning consistently, the amount of those emotions have gone down. It feels like significantly when I'm not doing poker, meaning I don't get mad less. I get mad much less. I don't get angry much. I don't get mad. I don't really get sad. I don't get happy. I don't get excited. I mean, I feel small bits of that, but I can't really sit around and ever say like, I'm super this, because and it seems like back in the day when I was struggling at poker, those were my worst qualities. That's what really held me back from being consistently the winner. So what do you think is a good way for people like myself to be able to separate those things and be able to sort of keep the emotions outside of yourself when you're playing poker, but then have the emotions included when you're not playing poker?
Oh, I didn't catch till the end there that you actually wanted to bring them back in. You want to bring the anger? You want more anger when you're not playing poker?
I want more overall emotion, because it seems like as my angers went down, my happiness has went. Just like those feelings, those intense feelings have sort of gone away because I've suppressed them from playing poker.
Right. Now, when you say happiness, there's the kind of happiness where you're fulfilling a craving or a need or a desire. And then there's the other kind of happiness where it's just like contentment and, peace. That's why it's kind of tricky. But so let me get more detail though. Tell me a situation where you're outside of poker, where you have less emotion than you used to, where you is it like just a party scene where you just wish you were more, had laughed more? Or
I think this is a good example. An example is that I've noticed is something like with my ex-girlfriend. Let's say we were going to go do something.
Okay.
Before, I remember, and that just this might actually have to do with maybe the way I view women and dating in general, but there were years ago, I would be extremely excited. I'd be like, can't wait. I can't wait to see what happens. And I would go into it with very excited. But now it's sort of like, I don't know. I just don't have that same, and that might be, this could be just a simple sample size. But even like, let's say watching a basketball game. Like I love basketball. I love watching basketball. But even now you have, the two best teams playing, the Warriors and Thunder playing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to see it, but I don't have that quite that extreme level of happiness and excitement that I used to have.
Or the extreme disappointment when your team loses. That's the upside. So
exactly. That doesn't exist either.
So I think that for a couple of things here, my friend Doug pointed out to me quite wisely that poker players in general, especially anybody who's done it full time or a lot of hours, I think we tend to be more introspective on average than most people because we're forced to, because we're just sitting there with our own mind, but we do the tilt and this and that. We have to ask ourselves what the hell happened, right? And so I think everyone mellows with age to some point. Like if you live to be 500 years old and you never played poker, you would probably still be less excited by basketball, even 50 years from now, right? As an old man, you're not going to go and get jumping around. So everyone mellows with age. I think poker accelerates it dramatically. I think that's part of what you're feeling. It's like almost shocking that in such a short period you can go from somebody now, but some of that is just natural aging. Guys at age 25 have a different attitude towards sports than guys at 45. That's just the way it is. So it's hard, maybe in your case, to separate how much of that is just natural aging in poker. But I think you should embrace this and not feel like, oh man, I really miss it when I used to get more excited about basketball. It's like you're just bringing in both ends of your emotional spectrum, which ultimately is going to give you you're going to have less unhappiness for sure if both ends come in. You see what I mean? So maybe it used to be you would bet on your team, you had your favorite team, and if they lost game 7, you were actually depressed for 3 days, you or whoever, right? And when they win the game, you're like super manic for 3 days. Well, what if that were brought in by 8 units? They win, you're kind of happy. They lose, you're kind of unhappy. But then that day is like a normal day for you, right? You're not going to be having extra arguments with people. You're not going to feel pissy and gray and blue just because of some random shot that somebody made. You know what I mean? That's the part that I woke up to with sports, because I used to be super huge sports fan and bet, and then I booked and did it all. And I was like, that was what helped me realize, okay, my happiness, I've turned my happiness over to random events. Everything is random all the time. What people say is random. Sports bets, what card comes on the turn. And so I started seeing my own happiness and unhappiness as this jagged line just bouncing around like crazy. And I had no control over any of it. And sports was one of the things that made me realize that, because I was like, God, I'm sitting here watching this TV and I am like sick inside. How can that be right? I don't know if that answers you.
So what did you do yourself to be able to, I guess, take more control of that and have more of an impact on it yourself instead of it being random?
Well, two things. One is the natural progression, like what you're talking about. So with sports, I had the natural progression, okay, by booking it for a couple of years, very small, but that made me less emotional about it. Just like you become less and less emotional about poker, about the bad beats, right? You, me, and everyone, just through sheer repetition, right? And the same thing happens really with anger, let's say traffic frustration or whatever. As soon as somebody decides, oh, I wish I would get a little less frustrated in traffic, then over time, through sheer repetition, over and over and over, they can get, mellower behind the wheel. So there's the natural mellowing that happens through repetition, and then there's the huge acceleration of controlling your mind that can happen by meditative training.
So it's kind of like each time you're going to tell yourself, you're going to get mad at first once you're trying to fix that issue, but you keep reminding yourself over and over again, like, maybe I shouldn't be this upset. Maybe I shouldn't be this upset. Maybe I shouldn't be this upset. And then after a while, it finally clicks in.
Right.
And then progress. So it's sort of like taking that and then carrying that over into other areas of things. So for instance, let's say you go to dinner with friends and it makes you feel not much. You sort of tell yourself, this makes me feel happy. I enjoy this. I like this. And then over time, it sort of becomes the reality, and you don't have to say that anymore because you will enjoy it or it will make you happy. Yeah.
Right. Instead of just leaving it to random, you can control the thoughts in your mind. Like when I'm going for a walk or whatever, I can decide, okay, I'm going to think about, like I'm playing a concert coming up, and I got a couple songs I need to learn. I'm like practicing songs in my head, which is no big deal, right? But then I start randomly thinking about something else, just totally random. But because I have the mental gadgetry in place, I, at some point, after a minute or 5, recognize that, and I can consciously decide, oh, I need to go back to thinking about this song. I need to think about that song now. Now, there's an example that had nothing to do with reducing suffering. It's just a matter of efficiently being able to use your brain exactly how you want. Another area that is I've noticed a lot of improvement, and I mean other people commented on me on, is when it comes to devices and all the distractions in the modern world because of the electronics, right? And being able to learn to not react when the phone makes a noise that says, hey, somebody's texting you. That right now is like almost a skill set that people are hoping to acquire. But that's one of those things it takes what meditation does is it trains you to not move. It trains you to not react to an impulse. Okay. So let's say you're sitting there and it's 3 minutes or whatever, and you get the impulse to get up. And then you're like, oh, well, my timer hasn't gone off yet, so I'm not going to get up. That is identical to you lifting weights. That's one rep. That's one mental rep. Okay, your mind just got stronger. Your ability to concentrate, your ability to control yourself got stronger by the same amount that your bicep gets stronger when you do one rep. How much does your bicep get stronger when you do one rep? Almost zero, but it is some amount, right? That's why it takes many, many repetitions. So you're sitting there, you get an urge to stand up. You say, no, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to sit here. So you train yourself to not react to random impulses. And then you start seeing this is assuming that somebody wants to learn this skill of not reacting to their phone every time it makes a sound. Okay? Then you use the phone itself as your training tool. That becomes your training tool. You're like, okay, that just beeped. I know it's my buddy, whatever, but I'm working on this right now, and I know for a fact that if I don't reply to him for 10 minutes, the world will not stop. And oh, look at me. I've developed this amazing skill. I don't even have to reply to him. I can continue doing this thing that is on my list to get done today that's more important. That's the other thing, is you can watch your priorities shift consciously instead of randomly, right? So you're like, oh, right now, this is my priority. 10 minutes from now, that will be my priority. And it's like boom, 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 very simple. You can just like organize your mind, organize your thoughts, and your actions.
I gotta say, so there's some chat going on, and
Okay.
I had to time some chat.
That's right.
They're tilting me. But so what you're saying, I think a lot of people out there might not be able to. It's going to sort of come in like it's going to come in like a foreign language to them. But
Yeah, well,
the things that you're saying are directly. This is some of the most one of the most interesting stuff I've heard probably in the past recent months, because everything you're talking about are things that I can't really put a finger on it in terms of, when I think about what I'm trying to get better at or work at, or these qualities I'm trying to improve on, I can't really even put a word on it. But, things that you're talking about, the way that you're putting it is just makes so much sense to me. And I've never thought about it that way. I've never thought about it as in, one time you force yourself to do something. It's sort of like building a habit. And I guess it's something I've thought about maybe randomly as in habit building, or just building up something. It just takes a while, and you're going to be doing it and you're going to fail at it. And I think the way that you put it in terms of it being one rep, you not looking at your phone one time it goes off, that's one rep. And how much does one rep of a bicep curl really affect you? Overall, not much, but how much does many reps of a bicep curl affect you? It's going to have a big effect on you. Yeah. And I think putting it in that spectrum makes it much easier for me personally to remind myself that it's a long-term thing for anything like that. And it does take work. And to compare the two, it sort of gives me personally more confidence that I can overcome whatever it is I'm trying to get to, because I know I can overcome it in this area. And it's very similar type of things. It just takes the work and it takes repetition.
Yeah. Well, and the similarity of that, I love the phrase, rising tide raises all boats. And that's what this is. When somebody develops better concentration skills and just better control over their mind, everything improves. Even, the ability to listen to someone talk, obviously with poker, I mean, that's why so many of my clients are interested in it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with using meditation strictly to make money. I have no problem with that at all. I mean, it's really catching on Wall Street now. There are firms that are having their top guys take meditation training for one reason. They only have one motive, and that's to make more money. They're not doing it to reduce unhappiness.
So if you're going to give, an advice for someone who is looking to get into meditation, is something like Headspace, is that probably the best approach for people to take to get into it?
Interesting. Before I forget, so a lot of you guys are Run It Once subscribers?
I believe so. Yes, we might be. If we're not, maybe we're going to go now. Shout out to Run It Once.
What's that?
I said if they're not now, maybe they'll go become subscribers.
Okay. Well, anyway, I made 10 videos over there, and I just finished my last one, and 3 of them are about meditation. So anybody that's interested in meditation at all and is a Run It Once subscriber, the order to watch, the first one's called Medding, Medding. The second one's called How to Grow Your Own Meditation Practice. And the third one, which isn't up yet, is called One Breath, the minutia of sitting meditation. But you're asking about how to get going?
Yeah, well, that was kind of the thing. How can people get started? Let's say, for instance, you have somebody like myself who's never really got into motivation, never really tried it. What would be a suggestion to getting into it? Because I know I tried it a couple of times in the past. Yeah. I just haven't stuck with it. As you said, you're sitting in that chair, and instead of you fucking finishing it or doing it the next day, you're just like, meh.
Right.
It's not on my mind. I'm not going to do it.
Well, it's kind of like, Mike Hero. I don't know if you know who he is, but way back when he wrote an article he wrote a lot of great stuff. And one of his things was you need a poker buddy. This is back before the internet, before coaching, before anything. He's like, you need a poker buddy that's on your level. You grow together, you bounce your ideas off of. You need somebody. And it's the same way with meditation. Doesn't have to be a poker one person. It can be a community. It can be whatever. But what I would say to anybody who's interested in getting started is don't think of it right now today about, okay, I'm going to start it. Just start learning about it. Go to YouTube and just start searching for meditation and mindfulness and watching videos. Now, as far as using Headspace and Calm, which is another app, and there's new apps coming out all the time, which is part of, kind of indication of a lot of people meditating now. those apps are excellent. Sean Lafort, I know he's been on your show. He's been a guest speaker in 2 of my videos at one-on-ones. 2 of the ones about meditation, because he meditates. Now, he's someone I had never met. I still haven't met him. We just had a couple emails. All I know about him mainly is what he sent me on his clips about meditation. I lost track where we were.
Now we're talking about LaForte. Actually, we had LaForte on the podcast. We've had him on the podcast a bunch of times. And the last podcast, we were talking about meditation.
Here's what it was. He loves the app Headspace. Okay,
right.
It's done wonders for him. Okay, now, and I have other clients who have told me it's really good for them. So this is a really good example of where you got to kind of find what works for you. For some people, doing it with Headspace because they're used to the technology, and if that's the only way they're going to do it, then that's the best thing, right? But I would say that anybody who does start with Headspace, they should think of that as just their kind of like training wheels. Okay, it doesn't mean you wouldn't come back and keep using it, maybe even forever, but ultimately, the heavyweights, the real heavyweights that build the big muscle, requires sitting alone in silence without any devices, without anyone talking to you. This is my belief. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can learn a lot through apps and this and that, but ultimately it's you and your mind and nobody else. Quiet. That's it.
My buddy Daniel, I know Daniel's real name, or his online name, Daniel Tashkov, aka GGC later, says, Joey, can you ask Tommy what his core value is? Very interested in the answer.
Compassion. I just try to be not lost in my own mind, even though I am most of the time. And I try to give back as much as I can, because I feel like I've just been extremely fortunate.
So when you say give back, meaning give back in terms of just helping other people out?
Try to help out, whether it's my neighbor down the street or whether it's the world at large.
So what are some examples of that you feel like that you've done in the recent times?
That's my motive for writing. That's my motive for writing is, in fact, I several times thought about putting Painless Poker out just for free. Got overruled by the other half of the finance committee. but I'm as corny as it sounds, I'm just not in it for the money. And my writing and my teaching is my way of giving back. And then the other thing I anticipate doing, I'm part of a very large family with a lot of old people. And so I'm planning to be spending a lot of time in hospitals and just being with people who are sick.
Is that something you do now, or is that something that you want to be?
I've done some, but I anticipate that coming.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, the core philosophy, it isn't about acts. It isn't about acts and actions. Because I've changed like what is the probability in any given moment that I'm going to be totally focused on my own needs and desires, and what's the probability that I'm going to be able to occasionally step outside of that and see what somebody else needs who's either in front of me, or I might be even just reading an email. It doesn't matter. I've changed in that way. I think I used to be extremely selfish all the time, and now I'm able to be generous sometimes.
Interesting. So it's interesting you say that. How did I'm going to ask this question. I've been drinking a lot of water in my workouts, so I'm going to go to the bathroom. I can hear the answer though.
Cheers.
How do you think you stopped being so selfish? What were the things you maybe started consciously being aware of that you then stopped? Talk about that a little bit.
I hate to sound like a broken record, but it all comes back to when I started meditating. I don't think I ever would have made this change Without that, boy, that's kind of funny. As soon as you disappear.
The pressure's on, Poppy. I'm being there. So your challenge.
Interesting.
Your challenge is to talk. Pretend I'm here. Pretend this pillow's me right here.
No,
so this is Joey. Shout out to me, Poppy. Look at Poppy. He's talking right now. This is me right here.
Respect for like Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert and those guys that can just talk into a camera like that. That's phenomenal.
I could wait. I might actually have a picture of my friend that I could put right here. She's a woman, so you could look at her while you're talking.
Did you get your wallet?
I'm gonna leave it on you. Okay.
Oh, you're
what do you say? I didn't go to the bathroom. How fast do you think I pee, Tommy? Come on. I'm not a fucking.
Can I just meet you back here in 2 seconds, or will everybody leave?
Okay, you go. I'm gonna give some shout outs then.
Okay.
All right, you go ahead. Guys, live podcast, you know how it is sometimes, man. You gotta go to the bathroom, drink a lot of water. Man, you know what it is. Let me see what we got in the chat. Who we got? We got Brad. What up, Puppy? What's up, Brad? What's happening, man? What's happening? Wow, that ish. What's up? Wow, that is it. What's happening, buddy? Palmer Squall. What is your GTO bottle? My GTO bottle of choice right now is one of those hospital things you get, and it's big, and it carries it can hold about 5 or 6 pisses in there, depending on how much water you're drinking. So very GTO. Who else we got? Balls Deep, Puppy. What's up? What up? Jackson Leonard, Alex Babbitts. What's up, Alex? Lost in Poker, Michael Wolf. What up, Michael? Does Tommy use a pee bottle during meditation? Seems GTO. That's a great goddamn question. I mean, I don't know. On the surface, it seems like a dumb question, but no such thing as dumb questions. That's not true, but you know, whatever, man. What is Cableen Rajamate? Puppy. What's up, Puppy? What up, man? All right, you back?
I'm back. I just had a great idea. So you're gonna go pee?
All right.
You're gonna go pee?
Yeah, I'm
just gonna play some AC/DC.
Okay, there it is. You play some AC/DC, Poppy. All right, go ahead.
Cool.
Bang, 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 bang.
Good timing.
What are people saying in the chat, man? Listen, man. You think you can do better than Tommy on the guitar? You send me a motherfucking video. You watching it? Otherwise, you ban forever. I got to ban everyone in the chat who said they can do better than that. Wim. But I'm going to give you a temporary timeout. If anyone wants to get unbanned, they're going to have to send me a video of them playing the banjo. And I got to watch it, and I'm going to show Tommy. If we say we don't love it, you never come back in the chat again.
Seems fair.
That's what it is, man.
Yeah.
This ain't Twitch, motherfuckers, man. Come on.
No, we're not messing.
Put some fucking respect in the fucking chat, motherfuckers. Come on, I'm getting tilted over here, Tommy. How do I stop this? How do I stop the tilt right now, Tom? How can I do it? Give me some advice. What can I do to be accepting of this fuckery? What can I do? I'm fired up now. What can I do?
There might not be any hope for you.
Hey, you said, Tommy, you said some things written down. Is there some things you want to talk about with me, or some things that you noted down in your notes?
Well, you know, because you oh yeah, actually here's an idea of how you could start doing some mindfulness stuff at the gym. So
okay.
Is that interesting to you? Like how you could do
for sure. Let's
do you go to an actual gym, right?
Yeah, I go to an actual gym. Yeah, I have an actual gym I go to, and then when I'm traveling, I do my workouts sometimes. I put together a hotel workout routine with a couple things that I have, and then I just some things that I've trial and errored. And then now there's an apartment gym here. So yeah, there's always a gym close by.
So what's your hotel routine like?
My hotel routine is usually going to involve my foam roller, a bunch of different stretches, squats with just body weight. Sometimes I'll do squats where I'll put some stuff in my suitcase. Then you put the suitcase over your head,
right.
and then you do squats with that. And then I usually do different interval squats, meaning on my body weight squats, I'll do fast ones. I'll do some slow where I put it down. I'll do different repetitions. And I've noticed when you do that, when you really hold the workout, it really goes slow with it. It burns so much. And then I put push-ups in there as well too. I have a couple different variations of push-ups I'll do. And you don't really need to do many reps, because if you do it extremely slow, you're going to get such a burn in your body, and you're going to be able to hit different parts. You'll be able to inner chest, be able to hit outer chest, be able to hit some. I mean, if you want to hit more arms, you can throw arms in that one too. And then my ab workout is usually a couple different exercises that I use on the bed, and I do some wall sits, can do some lunges, and then I have my hand gripper shots and my hand gripper. So it's kind of like this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I put together a pretty good hotel workout, because I'm in hotels so much, and I didn't have a gym. I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Camp with this.
Well, for what it's worth, I encourage every one of my clients who's, like, say, traveling to play poker to do a workout in their room of some kind. So are you implying that when you're at home in Chicago, you don't do it at home? You don't do this stuff at home? Do you do something every day?
I do it. I do this. I stretch and foam roll pretty much every single day. So whenever I'm watching television, I'll usually do some type of workout on my area. Okay. And then, but I go to the gym. When I go to the gym, I usually I'm lifting pretty heavy right now, because I'm sort of switching up my approach to what I want to do for lifting. Right. And so I've been trying to just let my body recover and recuperate. In between my heavy lifts.
I got great news for you, because a big part of what is a big hurdle for a lot of people when it comes to doing any kind of meditation type mindfulness stuff is establishing a habit. But you already have a habit. Okay. So I'm just want to give you a couple ideas here. Just talk only about your hotel workout, your home workout. When you do your stretches, what is going on in your mind? Do you count breaths? How do you determine how long to stay in a stretch?
See, that's something that I definitely know that I probably could be doing better. I feel like I get impatient a lot of times in my stretch. So I really watch my breath, and I try to focus on my breathing. But even then, I feel like I can't stay focused on some of the stretches and really hold them for the GTO length of time.
Right.
And then I hold them short.
Okay. So we're getting close to something maybe good here. Okay. So, when you say you follow your breathing, whatever you just said, what do you mean by that?
So I'll give you an example. So let's say I'm doing one of my stretches. So let's say I'm doing a simple stretch like this. So when I'm holding the stretch, I'm trying to focus on my breath. So it should be holding this like 20 seconds, right? So I'm holding it right around here. Maybe I'm starting to think about other things. So when I'm really trying to count my breath, so I'm going. So that's when I get into my breath, and I'm really trying to slow my breathing down and really focus on getting in and getting it back out. And that's when I've noticed that I can focus more on the stretch that I'm doing. Even my workouts, I focus better on my workouts when I'm doing that. Yeah,
this is great. And so we're going to call that a mindful breath. Anytime you are aware of whether you're breathing in or out, okay, that's going to be our definition of a mindful breath. And this definition is 2,600 years old. This is like not. Let me just say real quick, when I mentioned Buddhism, all that, to me, it doesn't really matter where this information came from at all. It doesn't matter if it's 10 minutes old or 10,000 years old, although it is interesting that it's been taught by so many generations of people, and then there are certain things that have not been changed, which does lend credence to them. But one of them is, according to the scriptures or whatever, the first lesson Buddha gave was, breathing in, I'm aware I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware I'm breathing out. Just awareness of in and out, okay? Now, you've already done some of this, which is great. So it won't take that much work for you to fine-tune it and get a lot better at it. So you already said, just there, you implied that, okay, I can follow my breathing for a little bit, and then, of course, I lose track, which is normal. Meaning, what I took from that was, you wish you would follow it longer, right? Do you wish you had more mindful breaths do you want the percentage of your mindful breaths during your home workout to go up? Say yes.
I think I'd like my percentage of mindful breaths to go up on everything I do for the most part.
But see, now this is the training though, because you're this close. So when you are doing your stretch, your lunge, pick a specific number of breaths every time before you start. You get to make that up. And you can change it while you're going. So a good number for me is 6. That happens to be the number I learned from my very first yoga teacher. So when I'm doing a lunge, I hold it for 6 breaths. Now, the speed of the breath can vary, right? I mean, you might have just come off something. Yeah, it doesn't matter what the speed is. You get to make that up too. But the whole idea is that you set out, you set a little target to target. My target is I'm going to try to focus on my breathing for 6 breaths. If you don't, it doesn't matter. You know, that's another thing you learn from this. You learn to not beat yourself up over having a scattered brain because you just watch it fly all over the place all the time. But the only reason you can see it fly around is because you have to bring it back first. Then you notice that it went off, right? So for all of your stretches, whatever they are, pick a number of breaths before you set into each stretch. You'll know what a good number is. And you know that it doesn't really matter. That's meditation training right there. The act of putting your concentration on your breathing, then your mind drifts, then you come back to the breathing, your mind drifts, you come back to breathing. Every time you come back to the breathing, that's one more rep in your mental strength that you're building. You know, it's kind of a misconception. People think like doing chess or solving puzzles is like good mental exercise. That's one form of training for the mind in logic, but it's exactly the opposite of training in mindfulness because your mind is still just off on its own when you're playing chess. Mindful thinking, mindfulness is when you are unaware of your thinking and then you become aware of your thinking. Or you're unaware of your body, and then you become aware of your body on purpose. So, and that's what meditation is. So this could lead to something. If you were to start doing this, counting your breaths, and you could do it at the gym. At the gym, lifting heavy weights, you got enough to concentrate on. That's like forced concentration. Anytime you're doing something that doesn't require enormous amounts of strength, where it's either light weights or you're jogging or walking or whatever, what I recommend is that you commit to taking a small portion of that and making that mindfulness training. So let's say you're at the gym for an hour. You might set out, okay, I'm going to do a minute here, a minute there, a minute here, a minute there. You know, you make that up. But if you did 5 or 10 minutes of mindfulness stuff of any kind out of every, say, hour that you commit, this is the beautiful thing. Let's say it's an hour. You're already committing time to self-improvement, right? The reason you do it is to make yourself better or to change yourself in some way that you want to do. So you're ripe for adding on. So all you got to do is take the same amount of time that you're already committing to self-improvement and take about 1/4 of that time and add mental training while you're doing the physical training. By mental training, I mean one thing. Being aware of whether you're breathing in or out, and then losing track, and then coming back and losing track. So counting is the basic practice. Counting breaths, counting to 6, counting to 10. What do you think?
It's interesting because it's certainly something that I've started doing just because like when I'm walking and I'm trying to focus more, when I'm trying to calm down, or if I ever feel myself like get a little bit lost in somewhere, I start breathing really deep, and it always brings me back. And I never knew if it was something that was working, or if that was something that like people thought about doing. It was just something I sort of came up with, and then I started doing it. And I've noticed that it had an effect. So it's interesting to hear it sort of put into words and explained why it works and why it's gotten better. Progressive, why it's gotten better over time.
Well, we haven't really even gotten into that much about why it works now, but okay, before today, if somebody said to you, what do people do when they're meditating? Did you know that focusing on the breathing is pretty much, and the posture is pretty much it? Did you already know that?
If someone said, what do people do when they meditate? I would say they sit there and they try to think about nothing, I guess. I wouldn't have a definition for it, to be honest.
Okay. Well, here's what they do. 2 things. Focus on breathing and focus on posture. And by posture, I mean the straight spine posture. You don't I'm not going to make you try to do that on the couch. But well, you already know from what you know that when your spine is straight, that's when your lungs are breathing best, and that's when everything's most functional, right? I mean, you know that from weightlifting. When you
didn't know that exact definition of things, but I always make the habit when I'm walking.
So let's say that, we have these tubes, right? If you take a tube and let's say you want maximum airflow through a tube, the most number of molecules that can go through per time, let's say. You would want it like that. Any amount of constriction in the tube or any amount of bending in the tube is going to slow down the flow to some extent, right? Well, the position where all of our tubes are maximally open is when our spine, way down here, coming out of the hips, is straight. Like that. Just like doink.
Wait, hold on. Okay.
So when you sit like that, every meditator you've ever seen is either sitting like this or trying to. And
what's he sit like that? Seems challenging.
You need a little harder surface. That's all.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. That's it. Yeah. But now here's the thing, Joey, is when you sit like that, once you breathe a few times, it's the end of the exhale is the only time when all of the muscles in our body are perfectly still. And that's because that's the only time that the diaphragm is still. So that's why when you see a baseball pitcher or a golfer or whatever, they always exhale before they do their thing, because right there at the end is the only time. So when you sit in the straight spine posture, even if it feels weird at the beginning, when you do a few exhales, it just relaxes. It's not stiff. It's not straight. It's not rigid. It's just relaxed. It's straight. So those are the two and only two components to the basic Buddhist practice of sitting meditation, is concentrating on the breathing and following the ins and outs by either counting them or narrating them in, out, and straight spine posture. That's all there is to it. There's nothing else.
My buddy Gus in the chat. Gus says, nothing worse than when someone says you know that right and you have no idea. I actually think that's a great thing, because when somebody tells me something I don't know, I get extremely excited. Like, you understand that? I'm like, not really, no. Tell me more. I don't know. I used to look at that as a negative, where I would feel some type of way. I feel bad. Right. But now when someone tells me something I don't know, like, tell me more. I want to know, because that's the only way you learn. Instead of feeling embarrassed, you feel like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to learn something new. Exactly. Suggested my young buddy Gus is to look at it like that, instead of as failure. Look at it as something positive.
Yeah, shamelessness is a beautiful thing. I think poker taught me that too. After turning over so many donk hands and ridiculous things, it's like your pride just kind of evaporates away a little bit after a while.
So what do you mean by go a little bit more into that? So shamelessness. What do you mean by that?
Oh, shamelessness is, well, just like you said you used to be, if somebody called you out on something like, you don't know that, there might have been a time years ago where you felt some sort of unease over that, like, because you shouldn't. Okay, like, take it in my case, let's say somebody tells me something they did, a year ago or whatever, and then they're telling me the same story again the next week, and I totally forgot. I used to be embarrassed over that, like anybody normally would, but now I have no shame over that, because I've come to accept the fact that I forget stuff, that everybody.
But what do you say to them in that situation then? When you can tell they're like, do you remember this? Do you remember that? And you don't. How do you, like, you just say, like, listen, I'm old. Like, what do you say in that situation to sort of alleviate the feeling that person might be feeling?
Couple different automatic responses, which I've never thought about, but basically I'd say something like, they say, remember that story I told you last week about the woman at the grocery store? And I'll say, you better tell me again, or something like that. You know what I mean? There's always a very, very easy way, because all I want to do is get the information. It isn't about whether or not I forgot. It's like, what is it you want to tell me? I have no problem just saying I forgot. Tell me again. But it doesn't. It's just the way I think it relates to poker is like, a big part of my game, I used to talk all the time, blah, 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 and then in the last 10 or 12 years or so, I've but I play a style that I gave a name to called mum poker, where I don't talk at all to anyone ever about anything. And one of the reasons I grew quiet over time was I got tired of all this is at lower stakes, blah, blah, the sort of petty, repetitive conversations that come up all the time over and over in low stakes live poker. What'd you have? I had queens, blah, 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 all the lying, all the bullshit. Because I recognized that I was lying to save face. So let's say that I was pushing a hand really hard with like second pair, playing limit hold'em or whatever. And then it comes down to the end and a flush comes and the guy bets out. Well, it's like if he either already had me beat or he's got me beat now. Okay. So he bets, I fold, he shows the flush. And I might say, oh yeah, well I had top pair, top kicker. Total lie, because I don't want them to think, oh my God, I had a worse hand. I am so done with that. That's what I mean by shamelessness. You know what I mean? Those thoughts just don't even register about giving a shit at all about what they think, even a teeny bit. And more importantly, giving a shit about what I think. So shamelessness goes to the point where it's like, let's say I make a completely asinine triple barrel bluff and lose a pot. I can recover from that hand within minutes. By recover, I mean I'm not beating myself up over it, no matter how bad that play was. So the shamelessness even extends to myself. I'm just not ashamed of.
But don't you think you get better in that specific situation? The shamelessness you get from making that play and having it fail.
Yeah.
The shamelessness, you can take that and turn that into something that you want to avoid in the future by playing better in situations that are similar to that.
Right. And I did that for 25 years. That's why I don't have to do it anymore. That's kind of my whole point. You know what I mean? I've been there and done that. I'm not going to get any better now from feeling shame. The only thing the shame can do now is make me play bad the next hand. There's no other consequence. There's no other consequence that can happen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it seems like you need to put in the time first, getting yourself into that situation before you can, I guess.
Yeah.
Before you can accept that you don't have to worry about that. Yeah. But I guess then you have to realize, how do you know you've reached that point? How do you know you played that situation enough to be able to understand that you shouldn't react a certain type of way about a play you made in that spot?
Everything you said is logically true, but it's unlikely that someone's going to have that much mental awareness. I think if somebody feels bad about the amount of shame they feel at the poker table, that undoing some shame is going to be a benefit to them, even if it means that, the way I put that is like, if somebody starts meditating or starts working on these long range things, they're still going to be basically the same person tomorrow. None of this stuff changes fast. But I do think that if somebody even listening to this conversation says, oh yeah, you know what, I'm one of those people that's always making up a story at the end of the hand because I'm embarrassed about what I actually had and I wish I didn't do that anymore. That awareness alone, just saying that sentence, is what begins the path. You see what I mean? First, there has to be some recognition of something they wish they didn't do anymore and they want to change. And if that's a new awareness, then time will just take care of it. Over time, they'll be more sensitive to that. They'll notice other people doing it and they'll say, God, this is also what happened to me. I'd hear other people doing it. It's like, do I sound that bad? Yeah, I don't want to sound like that anymore. Basically like a crybaby or whatever.
Right. Norris Smirnoff said, what are y'all talking about? Mason Joe says they're talking about things that will increase your win rate. I would agree with that completely, Mason, on your answer. I think if you're listening to this podcast right now and you aren't taking away 1, 2, maybe more than that, things that you can potentially start thinking about applying to the way that you approach poker in your own game, you could be doing more. Mm-hmm. If you're listening to a specific episode, that would be advice to you.
When you get like, everyone wants coaches on here or whatever, are your show, I've watched some of them, but like the first 10 minutes of a few, do you guys often get into like betting strategy and like value content? Not much. No. That's not the plan.
None of it. We don't talk about anything like never. I don't talk about it. Yeah,
I'm just curious.
It's nothing like that discussion.
Right. Okay. All right.
Yeah, we keep it around topics like this. I mean, this is personally what I find the most interesting, and I think there is enough content out there that centers around the idea of those type of things.
Right.
So if you want to, it's just not what I'm not interested in that, honestly. And unless I have some PLO guys on, but then I don't really want to discuss PLO strat because, I don't know. It's just not. I like discussion PLO strat, but I don't want to discuss it.
I got it
on the podcast, really.
In our one little chat I had. Go ahead. You got breaking there?
What do you say?
Huh?
What did you say? You said our one little chat we had.
I was telling you about my recent Pot Limit Omaha experience, that I've become a Pot Limit Omaha player.
Yeah. Tell me about that. So you said allegedly you've been playing more PLO. Talk about it, man. PLO. Well, you say you've been playing PLO before it was called PLO, which I find exceptionally fascinating.
Right, before it had initials. Yeah. I used to play PLO in St. Louis on a boat called the Admiral, right next to the Arch, back in '95. In fact, my book, Painless Poker, it opens with a true story, my story of greatest pain. It's like the first chapter is 30 pages of me just bleeding all over the place. And it happened down in St. Louis. But we used to play Pot Limit Omaha down there. And I played a lot of Pot Limit and No Limit even before it got big, because out here in the Bay Area, they've been playing No Limit forever. So what happened was, so let's see, for about the last 10 years or so, I've been playing essentially exclusively 5-10 No Limit live. Okay, that's been my game. So what happened was, about 6 months ago, a guy called me to hire me, and we did the interview. Perfectly qualified client. He plays 100%, almost 100% PLO live. Okay, so part of my program, this is going to take a little while to explain, but part of my program is we play in the same game together. We go to Vegas for 4 days, and we spend the daytime in the hotel room going over coaching stuff, and then at night we go play together in the same game for about 2 or 3 hours for mutual observation, no talking or anything. And then I'll take notes on various things. It could be hand mechanisms, mannerisms, it could be anything. Then we go over that the next day. And over the course of 3 or 4 days, one of the things we work on is his table presence and all that. So with this client, of course, I wanted to see him in his natural environment, and he plays nothing but PLO. So what we decided to do was we stayed at Vidara, and we played at Aria, and we played PLO. So this was my first time playing PLO since it took off, since it became big. Mm-hmm. And I did get some coaching from a couple clients of mine who are PLO specialists. And maybe if we have some time, I'll get into my actual betting strategy. And I really do think it's completely unbeatable in the 5-10 game with the Rock at Aria. The 5-10.
Wait, you think the 2-5-10 game?
2-5-10. Oh, is the Rock 10?
Yeah, the Rock's 10.
Oh yeah, 2-5-10. Yeah,
yeah,
the 2-5-10 game at Aria. Right, I was thinking of it as 5-10. The way they were playing the week I was there, I think I came upon an unbeatable strategy. But anyway, this is what happened. Was kind of funny. So the way I structure the week is we coach do the coaching every day. We play at night, and then the very last night on Thursday, we get done in the room at 6 p.m. and then I'm on my own to go play whatever I want that night. Okay, and I had every intention of playing 5-10 No Limit. I mean, at the beginning of the week, if you had asked me, what am I going to play Thursday night? I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go back to my safety zone, my favorite game, and go play 5-10. I go into the poker room. I go up, and I look at the list. There's no list on either game. The games were running, 5-10 and the 2-5-10. I go up to the games, and there's a seat open in each table. And I just followed my heart, and I sat down in the PLO game. So at that moment, I figured, well, I must be a PLO player because I had a choice, and that's where I sat.
follow your heart to the great game of pot limit Omaha. Heart, look at this. Your heart is calling yourself to the game. You had 4 fucking cards, guys. 4 cards. It's amazing. Oh my.
No, listen to this. Let me hear a sick
4 cards. Oh my God. Okay, go ahead.
Back in Ohio, during my first couple of years as a grinder, this is what the game, one of the main places where I played. The game we played was Omaha high only limit. Okay? And I'm talking about with the loosest players in the world. All of them at one table. So it was basically just a chip orgy all the time, every night, right? And so
an orgy.
Okay. And then at one of the other places that I played, these home games, it was all high-low games. And so we played Omaha high-low and variations of Omaha high-low, 5 cards and replace and all kinds of stuff. So I played I saw thousands of Omaha flops then, but not as PLO flops. So that was the whole idea of getting 4 cards and seeing the flop was not new to me, at all. Neither was the betting structure.
So wait a sec. So you mentioned this allegedly unbeatable strategy. Let's talk about this more. Go ahead. Let's get into this.
Okay. So let's say
I want to counter the strategy. So let's hear it.
Okay. So let's say you're playing in a PLO game where everybody is playing every flop but you. Okay. And every single person plays every flop but you for your whole life. And they're not even, well, we'll say they're average players after the flop. Okay. What do you think your VPIP should be in that game? And just for fun, we'll make it live because that's how I process.
Okay, so a live game, every player is 100 VPIP. They all play very similar post-flop.
Yeah.
And they all play exactly the same.
Would you ever play this hand? Ace, king, jack, 5 with the king suited.
Yes, from certain positions, for sure.
Okay. So when I used to play these games back in Ohio, they played so loose. That's why I brought it up. And this applied to Hold'em too. Okay. Limit Hold'em. Have you ever played Limit Hold'em?
I thought about Limit Hold'em. I never actually sat down and played it.
So, back then, I played like a billion hours of Limit Hold'em in really loose games. And the way to beat those games consistently was to play premium starting hands. Right? Now, I am, a decent to good to maybe very good post-flop player. It doesn't even matter, right? In those games, if you were an above-average post-flop player, you could beat the game just by playing a 20 VPIP and nothing else. And maybe 25, 30 on the button and cut off, okay? By doing nothing else but playing way tighter than them before, you would just beat them to death with aces and kings and queens, literally. You could not lose. I believe that there is some threshold of a poker game, of any game, where if there's enough chips in motion, okay, there's some number of chips in motion that makes it so that a very, very, very tight VPIP is not exploitable. It becomes profitable simply because you got better cards every single friggin' hand, okay? So what I did was, now this also made sense since I was new to the game, right? So this was like a double thing. I didn't want to get strung out on the turn with marginal situations. Now there's another little piece of this you gotta need to know. And there's a video I did run at once called Prepping to Play Perfectly. And I talked through a whole week. I went down and I played an Aria 5-10 no limit, and I talked on my breaks and gave a play-by-play. And I gave a real detail about how I used to play this one certain style that was like super, super, super tight, but I would just play it sometimes. Is it no limit? And then I just made a conscious decision to play that way like the whole week and never leak once. A very, very strict pre-flop rules, okay? And I'm an artistic flowy player. I'm not a nerdo strict guy. I really am a very free-flowing player. But I did stick to this one very rigid guideline. So I know how to do that. I trained myself to be able to sit there patiently and fold. I could go and fold every hand of a session and leave and not feel unfulfilled. I could fold every single hand for 6 hours if I wanted to and not feel impatient or disappointed. I'm not kidding you, okay? This is a sick skill I have now. So what I did with the Omaha is I decided to play nothing but absolute premium hands every hand, no matter what. The only time I slipped, the only time I played a dangler was on the button. I did not have one dangler for 5 sessions. And so when we got to the turn, I'm starting with, Jack 10, 9, 7, basically every hand, okay, that I'm in. And then I wouldn't commit big unless I hit the flop big. So when you have a premium hand like that and you hit the flop big, and those are the only hands that you ever get to the river on, that's a pretty comfortable situation. Now, that would be an extremely exploitable strategy in many games. But if there's enough chips in motion, right? If there's enough chips in motion, then there's some number of chips in motion that it becomes where that would win. For example, if everybody was in every pot and you had unlimited time and you played nothing but premium hands every single hand the rest of your life, they could not exploit you. I'm sorry, it's too late. They're already in for the flop, right? It's unexploitable. That game, the way they were playing that week, happened to be loose enough that this strategy was a winner. I don't mean a winner in how much I made. I mean a theoretical winner, and I'm able to evaluate that. I'm pretty good at that. So there you go. So I expect to have the lowest VPIP of anybody in that room every time I go there, if anybody's ever played there.
Think about this. In theory, would that work? God, you'd be so fucking bored because you only see 20 number of hands an hour.
But I don't have boredom. I don't do boredom.
Well, that's the thing. If you never have boredom, I mean, unbeatable. Obviously, it's definitely not the highest win rate possible because you make a lot of money by playing hands against these guys who are playing such a high VPIP. You make a lot of money by playing hands that aren't in that top XX percentage of hands because you just can play better than them post-flop.
Are you talking about the theoretical game?
Where your win rate comes in.
Are you talking about the theoretical game where everybody's in or the actual Aria game?
I'm talking about the actual game.
Okay, yeah. Well, maybe, but here's the other thing. Okay, I play poker to have fun. All right, and this is actually fun for me. It's actually fun for me to just watch the game, sit there and just wait until I have the stone cold nuts before I chunk any chips in there.
I guess the argument to that is that in a situation where you're only playing the nuts pre-flop, the hand equities are so close. Even if you only come in with premium hands, if you're going 3 to 4 way to the flop. Although, is it unbeatable? That's a really interesting question. Is it unbeatable? I think a lot of my PLO friends would just be like, if they would think they know the exact answer because they never think they're wrong in anything. But
here's another thing. I never raise before the flop, no matter what, because I always want the pot to be as small as possible.
What? What?
No.
Oh, what?
Because I don't want to put money. I don't want to put big money in until until it's late. We used to call it shoot 'em in the nest. You can shoot them on the fly. You can shoot them on the pond, or you can wait and shoot them in the nest.
I don't think so we're talking about live floor and PLO guys in the chat. So I don't think if you aren't raising any of these premium hands pre-flop, I don't think you can win because you're just going to get, even if you're going into the turn and river with much stronger ranges than your opponents on average, there's just going to be situations, and especially PLO, the board becomes so dynamic, you're just not going to know what the right play is in that situation to make. And you might have a range advantage going into those spots, but you're not necessarily going, is it unbeatable?
You'd have to play it.
It just seems like you'd be making incorrect decisions a little bit too often.
Let's say I got ace, king, queen, or whatever, the greatest hand is, okay? And a guy raises me, it's 5, 5, 10, a guy makes it 40, okay? And it comes around to me, let's say I'm in, what's that?
180. You pot it. Pot.
Okay,
180.
let's say I make a 180. Let's say the stacks are whatever 3,000. Okay, and let's say I'm in the small blind, and I know I'm going to get two guys. Like a guy made it 40, and another guy called, right? And I make it 180.
So wait a second. You have 3,000 in this scenario at this game in 2-5-10 game.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had 3,000 a lot. I think the maximum was 15.
1,500.
Yeah. There were some big stacks in that game. Okay, so 1,500 doesn't matter. So I make it 180. Let's say that I know for sure both these guys are going to call. Okay, right? My 180. So now we got whatever 500 in there. And
let's change it from the small blind. Let's change it out of it, because small blind you're just going to call in that situation most of the time, even though I would always 3-bet.
Oh. But
let's say you're in the cutoff, because the position matters. So let's say you're in the cutoff. Small blind, you're not really 3-betting much that deep. You're not 3-betting hardly anything at live. It's just it's case by case basis. Player to player matters so much in that situation. So let's say you're in the cutoff.
Okay. Make it the button. Hell with the cutoff. I mean, okay. So boy, it's hard to explain the great peace I enjoy by not having $500 in the pot before I've got the nuts. You know what I mean?
What's that? In the pot.
Pardon me?
This scenario, you have 180 in the pot.
No, but then they both call. That's 500.
Right, but you got position on them.
Huh?
You got position on them, and you got a range advantage against their hands in this situation. This is a dream spot. This is kind of what you want to have. Yeah. This is why you play PLO, to get spots like this.
But I would rather have 10 spots where I only put 40 in, or whatever. 5 spots where I put 40 in. And here's the other thing. They're not going to put me on that hand for whatever it's worth. There's some value there, but not really. I can't explain it, Joey. There's no way I can explain this in a way that makes sense, because it's one of those things that until someone has played it for some number of hours, you can't be familiar with the metagame things that happen. Let's say you're playing with a guy like that, and you've been playing with him for 3 hours, and he's never raised, and every single time he turns over the stone, a big hand with a big flop, right? And now I would
never fold to that guy in position in my entire life if he's that deep. I will not fold any cards ever to him. I would, because what his hand is. There's so many situations you're gonna be able to.
No, but I can have 9-8-7-6. I'm playing that just as the same way before the flop. I'm playing ace, ace, king, queen. I'm seeing every flop for a reasonable amount. So this is what I've always said about hold'em. If you know a guy has nothing but ace, king, aces, kings, queens, or jacks, you still have to guess, right? You still don't know his hand. So anyway, I lost track. I'm not going to be able to go much longer. I usually take a break about every hour, no matter what I'm doing. Starting to run out of steam here.
What involves your break when you take a break from things?
Well, the first thing I do is I rub my little friend here. This is Max.
Whoa, rub your little friend. If you're watching this on iTunes, guys, he's rubbing an actual cat, not his little friend, his little papito, his little señorita. He's not rubbing that. So don't worry, guys. He's rubbing a cat. If you can't watch this back. I'm rubbing something, guys. I don't want to ruin the visual for anyone out there. All right. Well, hey, let's take a couple questions from the chat, and then we're gonna wrap things up. Okay. We've gone about 2 hours, guys, in the chat. Give me a couple questions in there. I think I saw one earlier. Let me paste it and read it back, because he asked again if I could show us some love. Yurko Fernandez, Tommy, what do you think of balancing your life versus obsessing with something? For example, playing 12 hours of poker per day versus playing 6 hours a day and using the extra hours for different activities.
Well, that question makes me think that he wishes he had more balance in his life. I'm guessing this is where I wish I could do follow-up questions, but yeah, balance is good. Buddha called it the middle way. And the whole idea is if you have something that you wish you were doing less of, you do more of that. And if you have something you think you're doing too much of, you do less of that. And you just keep making those little adjustments like all the time. So in his case, if he thinks he's playing too much poker, the answer isn't to actually, I don't think the answer is to try to go from 12 hours to 6 hours. Like with me, there are certain things I could not cut back on drastically, permanently. But a more gradual change might be good if what he wants to do is play only 6 hours. But yeah, one of the things I think that is so challenging about poker is that to get really good at it, you do have to obsess at it for years to get really good at it. There's no other way. And it's the same way with violin or tennis or anything, right? But then suddenly, somebody starts out and they obsess for 5 or 6 years, and now they're 30 and their priorities change a little bit, or they're 35. Yeah, there you go. And it's like,
try me. Okay, cool. Okay.
Now because the priorities change, questions come up like, oh, I think a little more balance in my life would be good. That's kind of what I was saying. Yeah. So
no. Keep going. Now what? Where am I at? No, keep going.
Go look up the middle way. You can practice on little things instead of going for poker. Instead of going for the main thing, you can do this with food. Let's say somebody has big sugar binges or whatever, and wants to cut back. You just gradually, a little less here of that, a little more here if somebody wants to walk. So it's a non-stop life process of less of the stuff that you think is bad and more of the stuff that you think is good. And then we call that balance, but it's really, we're making it up all the time. And
balance in the force.
Yeah.
Elise Schisler says, Puppy, does he have any women clients, and does he notice any differences in their mindset on and off the table? And I want to preface this by saying, please don't anger the feminists with this answer, Tommy.
Oh,
go ahead. They're going to come. I don't want Kate Hall tweeting Tommy Angelo fucking said this up here. There's going to be articles on the poker women's sites. These women are ruthless, Tommy. Be careful. Go ahead.
Okay. I have I've had 2 women clients and one almost that I want to tell you about because it's really funny. My first woman client was, her name is Anna Paradox. That's her actual last name. She changed her name. And I'm telling you her name because she's my editor. So if there's anybody out there who likes my writing and is a writer, check her out, Anna Paradox. You can email me.
Shout out to Anna.
Yeah. So anyway, she was playing online and hired me to coach her online, playing online. And she sent me my outline back. She says, there were some typos and things in here. I hope you don't mind if I fixed them. And I was like, great. And then she ended up being my main editor because she is an editor and writer. And then another woman client I had is Danielle Anderson, who was in Jay's movie, D-Moon Girl. You know her?
Right. Yeah, no, she's going to be on Girl Got Game, an upcoming reality female show.
Oh, okay. So that was kind of an interesting thing. We didn't do the full program. We just did like a little short thing because it was involved in the movie. I was actually in that movie, but my scene didn't get used. And Danielle and I are still friends. I visit her when I'm in Vegas. And so those are the only ones, but the one I want to tell you about, just because it's kind of funny, there's a woman, this was right when poker was super hot, 2007. A woman wrote to me and she said, I'm super analytical, very geeky, into numbers and everything. And I see all these analytical type of guys are making a bunch of money playing poker. She's like, I want to learn how to play poker and make a living at it. Right? She basically not played a hand pretty much. And so I talked to her, I was like, well, a lot of the guys I coach, one of the reasons they come to me is they'll get their bankroll up to 100,000 and they'll blow it back. And then they'll get their bankroll up to 50,000 and they'll blow it back. And they go through all this pain and all this torture. And then they get their bankroll back up and they're like, you know what, I need help. I don't want to go through this again. I'm going to hire Tommy, right? And then that's the type of people who call me up. And I was like, so maybe after you've, taken a few lumps or whatever, and, I'm not the guy you want for beginning instruction. I gave her some people to go to. She was like, great, thank you very much, bye. So then she wrote me a letter like a couple of days later, and she goes, I got to tell you something. I'm a 50-year-old lesbian, and you're the first person that's told me I haven't suffered enough. So think about
wow.
Because she said that jokingly, because I was saying, you haven't suffered enough for me to coach you yet. right?
Right.
She was talking about all the other ramifications of being a, lesbian woman. That was pretty funny.
Right. What happened? Where'd she go? What happened with her?
Oh, that's the end of story.
That's it? What happened? Was she play poker? She is still lesbian? What's she doing? Married happily? What's her story, Poppy?
I have no idea.
Fuck, man. We got her email still? Let's get her on the pod. Let's find out more about her.
Well, who knows? No. She probably didn't ride the roller coaster the bankroll roller coaster I would have heard from her, I imagine.
Jackson says, can Tommy show his best dance move?
Oh, my best dance move?
Yeah, you got a dance move, Poppy?
That's it. No, I slow dance. That's the only dance.
You slow dance? You don't got like a this might I'm coming up with new moves right now. I'm in the move lab. I'm just coming up with some right now.
That's a pretty good move.
That's it, man.
Yeah, I'm one of those musicians that is like, one of the reasons I played the drums was so I like watching. I think what happened was I played drums in a country rock band for years, and I saw all the drunk, idiot white guys out there dancing, making fools of themselves, and so I think that's what turned me off to dancing.
But doesn't that go back to a mental part where it says it doesn't matter what people think about your dancing as long as you're enjoying the dance and having a good time?
I strongly agree, but this was a long time ago. I had all kinds of fears and anxieties.
But now you don't do much dancing right now, though.
No, if my wife and I are out, we'll slow dance. That's about it. I call it swaying.
Swaying. So you do like that awkward thing where you put the hand kind of right above her butt or something like that, or
yeah, we just maul each other.
Really? Maybe I should put this on my bucket list. Maybe I got like a podcast bucket list. Maybe go slow dancing with Tommy and his wife. Maybe that should be on the list. Because in San Francisco, I can knock out a couple of things in the podcast bucket list.
Yeah. Do you ever come up here?
I have not. I usually go more. I'm in Irvine now, so I'm South LA. I usually go LA, San Diego. But I have a lot of friends out in San Francisco. So I really want to see San Francisco from a GTO standpoint as compared to the past. I've seen it from a non-GTO standpoint. So yeah, I'm probably going to go up there sometime soon.
Throw that term around, but I give the most GTO San Francisco tour that you could hope for.
Interesting, really.
It's based on.
That's my.
It's a completely in the moment tour based on weather. I mean, it's just it's a ride.
Well, I think that could be something we get into. Well, who's down there? Do you want to give any shout outs, Tommy, before we wrap things up? Anything else you'd like to add in here?
Oh yeah, one. Anybody that's interested in getting notifications about my book or any of my other projects, I do have a mailing list. So it's still gonna be a little while before the book comes out, but if you join my mailing list, you're guaranteed to be updated. And you can do that by going in my website, which is tommyangelo.com. And toward the middle of the main page, you'll see a little form there. Just fill out the email. You'll get an opt-in thing that you verify. And I send out it just looks like a regular email. It comes out about 3 or 4 times a year is all.
Cool. So check that out, guys, tommyangelo.com. Are you going to be in the series out in Vegas during the World Series of Poker at all?
No. I usually go down for 2 weeks. I'm not going this year because the band I played with in the 80s, we're doing a reunion concert. It's already sold out in Columbus, Ohio.
No way.
So I've been practicing every day. Now, all these guys have been full-time musicians this entire time. I'm the only one who left the music business. So I got to get my chops together. So that's why I'm going to get the World Series this year. It's pretty exciting.
Do you got a craziest groupie story, Tommy, from when you used to be in the band back in the day? In the 20s, obviously it's 30 years ago. I feel like the time's passed that, maybe say something that, you might have got a little crazy.
Oh, so many. One time we fired our sound man because the Cleveland Browns were playing the Broncos. They lost the championship game to them 2 years in a row. This is when the Broncos won the Super Bowls, okay? The Browns lost 2 years in a row last second. In the middle of winter, we're pulled over to watch the game at a Sheraton hotel. And there's 5 of us in the band who all are huge Cleveland Browns fans. We had our sound man who was kind of a whiner and not a sportsman. He wanted to go. So the Browns are down 21-0 at halftime. And he's like, let's go, let's go. So we get in the van. We're going through the high country in Pennsylvania. We had like little bit of reception in the truck. We're jiggling the wires to hear it. We couldn't even hear the game. What happened was the Browns came all the way back and tied it 31-31 and then lost 38-31. This is in the AFC Championship game. So we missed the whole second half. And then we fired him. We fired ourselves. We were so pissed off. There were a couple other issues too. There are other stories that involve things. A lot of stories. It was crazy. It was nuts. We had one time, my cousin AJ, he and I were kind of sort of the leaders of the band. We're in this restaurant we play in all the time. I used to joke about saying, we used to play some dive bars. I would joke about it and say, well, these places were so dirty, you would wash your hands before you pee. So, because you didn't want any of the crud of the bar getting on, getting on you. Anyway, I'm standing there I'm in a stall, and he's in the next stall over, and he sees I was wearing Converse low top at the time, and he sees me and the one over, and he takes his beer and he like drizzles it on the floor right between the stalls, and then he leaves, and I come running out to him. I'm like, AJ, you wouldn't believe it, some guy was in there pissing on my shoes. We used to have a lot of fun.
So you haven't done anything like that since the 80s? Since how long?
Like that since back then. Although I might have to come up with something since we're having a reunion.
Pretty crazy. Did you meet your wife on the tour, or did you meet her? How'd you meet her?
Oh, I met her on Matchmaker.com.
No way. When did you meet her?
2001. So she has been in the corporate world her whole life. And she was interested in meeting basically anyone outside the corporate world. And I was immersed in poker and not meeting a whole lot of women there. And turns out we were, very much from the same culture, same type families, same TV shows growing up, same music, all that. We just happened to drift off into completely different worlds. And so that's worked out really well. And there have been a lot of people, my age-ish, who do well by that method, because you can just put all your dirty laundry out there, and it's a really efficient. I think I use the word efficient where you say GTO sometimes. It's a real GTO way to meet somebody, because mine's first, rather than bodies first. So.
Not always technically, but I get what you mean.
No, it can be. It can be is what I mean. It doesn't seem like it would be, but it can be very efficient way, especially for people a little bit older.
Mm. Right. Interesting. Yeah, I used to online date back in the day, but now I try to. I haven't really gone on an online dating site in 5 or 6 years, 7 years, something like that, because.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was pretty funny with her. I said,
people in real life, Tommy, you got to keep. I'm trying to meet less people. So
when she said, she's learning about poker, right? And back then, this was before the boom, there were essentially no professional poker players. I mean, she had never heard of such a thing. And so I gave her the movie Rounders, which came out in '97, which I haven't seen some of the newer movies, but I mean, that movie has some great realism to it, especially the relationship with the woman, with the girlfriend. I said, and then I don't know if you know this book by Jesse May called Shut Up and Deal. Came up.
Heard of it? Haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
Check it out. He wrote it based on his time living at the Taj Mahal and playing there when it first opened in the early '90s. And I used to play out there. So some of the characters in the book, he changed their names, but I actually knew who they were. But it's a real gutsy, raw book that talks about grinding. The real grind of grinding. And so I said to Kathleen, I said, watch this movie and read this book, and you'll have some idea what the hell you're getting into here.
Some of the chat said, this dude is Laforte's dad.
Lafort what?
They said, you're Laforte's dad.
What's that last word?
You're Laforte's father.
Oh, father. Oh, okay. Well, I suppose I could do worse than a son.
That's not sure. You definitely could. All right, Tommy, do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap things up over here?
All good. Thank you, Joey. It was really fun.
No problem. Guys, if you want to stay up to date, make sure you go join the mailing list, TommyAngelo.com. Follow him on Twitter, the Tommy Angelo. If you have any questions, if you want to get in touch with him, what's the best way to get in touch with you, Poppy? On Twitter for people out there?
For me, email, Tommy@TommyAngelo.com.
Email. Tommy@TommyAngelo.com. Yeah. If anyone out there wants to get in touch, ask him a question.
Email me.
And let me know what you guys think about the podcast on Facebook or on Twitter.
And I'll tell you
if you like it.
Somebody emails and says, I heard you on the Joey show. I'll just email them my books for free if they want.
Okay. If you email Tommy and say you heard me on my show.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet deal for everyone out there. Guys, we're going to be back tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, same time as today with Sean Deeb, one of the tournament extraordinaire, high-stakes mixed game, cash game player, overall poker boss. That'll be tomorrow. And Tommy, thanks for coming on the podcast. Had a lot of fun. And we'll probably chat soon. We got to get you back on here sooner than later. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the next time we get you on.
Yes. Definitely when the book comes out, for sure. I'll send you a copy. Okay.
100%. I'm in.
Okay. Cool.
All right, guys in the chat. Much love. Peace out. I'm out. Take care. Adios.